He is the Associate Provost for Academic and Faculty Affairs, and he has joined us today to talk about tenure and promotion. So I will turn it over to Dr. Haas so he can educate us all about policy. Dr. Haas, you're on mute.
I'm funnier when I'm on mute, so you're welcome for that. So good morning. Thank you, everyone, for the invitation and for attending today. And what I hope to accomplish today is just kind of go through a little bit, maybe a 30,000-foot view of the tenure promotion process, and to provide some insights and some resources related to successful management of the process, as well as successful movement of a candidate's dossier through the process and through to the intended goal, which is promotion, obviously, and or tenure, depending upon the case itself. So hopefully somebody can give me a thumbs up that you're seeing a slide that says tenure promotion on it. All right, perfect. So I'm in the right place and you're in the right place. So we'll just start with a few slides to kind of landscape set. I always liked to start off with just a reminder that we have a large faculty. We have about 5,000 faculty spread throughout the state, across multiple campuses, both in academic campuses as well as healthcare related campuses. So it's a very diverse faculty body. And if we look at that distribution of faculty, we have about 65% full-time equivalent faculty that are in either tenured or tenure accruing lines, and about 42 to 45% in non-tenure accruing lines. Now, these numbers represent the full-time equivalent faculty. We do have a significant number of faculty participating as adjuncts or courtesy faculty, or in the Health Science Center as practicum supervisors. And when you add that body of faculty to the numbers, we almost reverse this. We end up being about 65% non-tenure accruing and 35% tenure accruing or tenured. So it's a pretty diverse faculty, which is great because that allows us to meet the multiple missions of the university, as well as to serve the state in the way that we can best do so. Here are the faculty titles that are governed by university regulations. When you add in some of the modifiers of research or clinical or interim or chair, et cetera, we end up about 1,100 different faculty titles being used in the HR system currently. But these are the main ones in our regulation. The ones highlighted in blue, as of the last time I checked, are faculty titles in use within the college. I must acknowledge that our faculty data gets updated at the end of October every year. So this may change, obviously, with the update of the fall hires. And so previous to the fall hires, these were the faculty lines in use within the college. So the ones that are starred are kind of the tenure track titles. The ones that are not asterisked are the non-tenure track titles. And then importantly, all of our faculty titles have the ability to be promoted. I also like to take an opportunity here to just remind us that the Gator Nation is everywhere. So our faculty are impacting the state throughout the state. Our faculty are impacting the country, and our faculty are impacting the world. And so if we just look locally and the impact that your college is having, right? It's not just located here in Gainesville, right? We have the City Lab in Orlando, we have DCP Global, and I always like to also take an opportunity to remind us that we're at a land grant institution. And one of the important parts of a land grant institution is that we have facilities spread throughout the state. So if your research or your creative works or your scholarship or your teaching can be benefited by an applied approach or having access to communities spread throughout the state, then I really encourage you to look into partnering with our IFAS faculty and our IFAS extension agents. Because we do, as I said, we have facilities in all 67 counties, and they are always open to bring the talents from main campus out to the communities that they serve. I also like to remind us early on that any accolades that come through this university come by way of the faculty, right? So the faculty, you execute the mission of the university. Without you, no education is being delivered, no minds are being changed, no buildings are being designed. Nothing can be accomplished without the work of our faculty. And so that means that we have to have our mind always on our faculty and our ability to develop our faculty and to reward our faculty. One of the privileges that comes with this position is that sometimes I get to insert my own opinion into things. And I'm going to take an opportunity to insert my opinion into this slide and into this moment of this presentation. And this is Chris speaking as a faculty member in my experience. I really encourage all of our faculty to view promotion and tenure as part of their academic journey and not the destination. Far too much in the academy, we use external markers as a value, or we rely on external markers to bring value to ourselves as scholars and teachers and ultimately as humans. And that's just not a healthy way to excel in our environment. I really encourage our faculty to be able to look themselves in the mirror and be proud of what you've done. And if you're proud of the teaching that you're doing, and you're proud of the creative works that you're creating, you're proud of your research, you're a good citizen, you're adding to the shared governance of the college, the department, the university. If you can look at yourself in the mirror and you feel like you're giving the best version of yourself, I can guarantee you that you'll be successful and you'll have a very anticlimactic letter given to you by the president in July that says, congratulations, you've been promoted, or congratulations, you've been given tenure. When faculty focus so much on making decisions on, will this give me tenure, or I'll go to my kid's basketball game once I get this grant out, or I'll go to do this once I get tenure. And then if it doesn't happen, then you've sacrificed your life. If you focus on being the best version of yourself, which includes being really good at work and being a good human, being a good father, being a good partner, being a good spouse, being a good friend, you'll have a very successful career here at the University of Florida, and you'll receive the accolades that you deserve. All right, so that's me preaching. You can ignore it or reflect on it, and I hope that you do find some solace in those words. Most importantly, in the promotion and tenure space, a faculty member should never feel alone. There is a team to help all throughout the way, both locally and at the university level. So locally, the chair, director, associate deans within the college, our professional staff are always willing and able to help faculty candidates build their packets, process their packets, and plan their dossier packets. The main website for information is hosted on our academic affairs website, and that's aa.ufl.edu with /tenure. I have a team that works with me. So myself and Dina Nelson, who's the faculty relations coordinator within HR, we are the primary contacts at the university level, but we intersect weekly with your local experts. So with Meg and Synergy, we are all here as a team supporting our faculty, supporting our directors, supporting our deans in this process. So there's no question that is too simple or no question that's too complex. My goal in my position is to do everything I possibly can to get us to 100% or 99% promotion and tenure rate. I'll live with a 1%. It was the faculty member's fault for not making the bar. But the rest of us are here to help get the 99% over that bar, to help you excel in your teaching, to help you excel in your scholarship and creative works, and to help you be successful in this space. Every year we produce a guidelines document that is called Guidelines and Information Regarding Tenure and Permanent Status. It does change every year historically, but it changes very little. So mostly it's clarification of statements or something that came up in this year's cycle that was confusing to faculty, and so we try to tighten it up and tweak it every year. There's not any type of large scale change. And the reason that's true is because our university regulations and the collective bargaining agreement have regulations and or articles directly related to promotion and tenure. And so any changes that are large scale have to be bargained and brought through the faculty senate through shared governance. So it's very rare that there's a large change from year to year. With that said, I really encourage you, as you plan for going up for promotion or for tenure, that you pay attention to the year that you're going up and the guidelines for the year that you're going up, and that you download the appropriate template. We'll talk about that later, but it's a bit embarrassing when your packet comes through and someone realizes that you used last year's template and not this year's template. And so let's try not to do that. There's also very good simulations and toolkits on how to utilize the OPT system. You'll hear it referred to as OPT. That's stands for Online Promotion and Tenure. I know that's a very sexy name for our tenure promotion, but that's what it is, OPT. And you can certainly walk through step by step through these toolkits and through these simulations. So again, I know this is it's a nerve-wracking time. It feels like a year of purgatory academically, and that's why we built all this infrastructure around you to support you through the process. So take advantage of what's available and ask as many questions as you can or as you like. We'll talk a little bit about some promotion and tenure ideas and what goes into the process. So remember, our faculty execute the mission of the university. Traditionally, that's going to be research, teaching, and service. It could also be extension. It could be clinical, depending upon your faculty title. It could be some administrative work in there as well. Our regulations and the collective bargaining agreement dictate that for tenure, we have to have distinction in 2 areas of assignment. Those are your primary areas of assignment. Because we're a Research 1 institution, for our tenure accruing faculty in the tenure space, research and teaching are primarily the 2, with I would say equal emphasis on both of those. We expect our faculty who are being tenured to be good scholars, good creators, and good teachers. At the university level, the university discusses the idea that going up for tenure, faculty members should be having an emerging national reputation and be substantively better than the average assistant professor within their field. And as we talked about here with distinction, the college criteria and the departmental criteria play a large role in defining what distinction is and providing examples of activities that can be considered towards distinction in your areas. So it's really important for you to understand that your disciplinary criteria plays a tremendous role in the evaluation of your materials. So it's not a guessing game. It's not like the outsider gets to impose their views or their criteria. It's all dictated by the criteria that's been passed by the faculty at both the department, college, and university levels. I have an asterisk here to remind myself that there are some potential upcoming changes in this area. What if the collective bargaining agreement that's currently being bargained goes into effect for next year? So one of those relates in the promotion space for distinction in two areas, is that some of our non-tenure accruing faculty might have an assignment only in one area. And so the university and United Faculty of Florida have tentatively agreed that in those cases, it would be incredibly difficult for somebody to have distinction in two if they're only assigned one. And so we've agreed that distinction in one would make sense. And we hope that, both sides hope that that will be ratified as quickly as possible. In the tenure space, all of our pre-tenure faculty have to go through a mid-point review. Typically it's in the third or fourth year, depending upon when the college has the probationary period. Some of our colleges have a 6-year, some of our colleges have a 7-year, some of our colleges have a 10-year probationary period. And so the midpoint obviously matches to the points of the length of probationary period for DCP. So in that midpoint review, it's identical to going through the major steps of the process. It just stops at the college level, and it doesn't involve outside reviewers. But it's a really great way for faculty to practice putting together the packet, have it reviewed, and get good feedback, and get a good indication on if they're doing the right behaviors that will likely lead to promotion and tenure down the road. You must be nominated for tenure by the beginning of the last year of your probationary period, and so you'll go up. Most people go up in the last year of their probationary period. The cycle is about a 9-month cycle. You'll find out in May on whether your case is going to be supported. If it's going to be supported, it'll go to the Board of Trustees for their June meeting, and then they will vote on tenure. If for whatever reason your packet's not being supported, you'll be notified. You'll have the opportunity to withdraw your packet or to let it go through and to receive the denial. And then based upon the length of employment here at the university, most people, if you're here for more than 3 years, would have a 1-year non-renewal period. So you have a year after that decision to find employment elsewhere. So as I said before, every faculty role is eligible for promotion. The process is the same. So you still create a packet. It still gets reviewed through the same levels. There are some unique differences, and we'll talk about that as we move through the presentation. The guidelines cover promotion and tenure. So again, it's a relatively same process with some minor tweaks. So as I said, the criteria is distinction in 2 areas. And I really want you to consider the packet that you'll download and that you'll start populating with information is an opportunity and to do so, and then really it's truthfully a requirement to do so, and that's to demonstrate that you've met the criteria for distinction in your areas of assignment. And I really want to encourage all of our faculty to try to use the entire packet to demonstrate distinction. The first, as a reviewer reviews your dossier, the first thing they see is a cover page, which is you have no control over. And then the next thing they see is a section called job duties. And that is your first opportunity to grab the reader's attention. So job duties, and then the second section, or next section, is areas of specialization. Those are two opportunities for you to briefly, and I say briefly because all of this packet is, it turns into a very large document, and the key is to be as concise and as persuasive as possible. For faculty who write grants, the analogy I give you is treat your packet like a grant. You want to grab the reader's hand at the very beginning. You want to lead them through the whole packet, convincing them that you're awesome, and you let them go at the end. And you don't give the reader any opportunity to form their own opinions on anything. So in a school like DCP, where you do kind of have the benefit of real world application and real world kind of experience and training, the analogy I use, this is really your opportunity to build your brand, right? This is kind of your mission statement for your business. It helps you establish credibility. You want to establish credibility as quickly and efficiently as possible. And again, I encourage you to set the stage for what the reader is going to see later on. If you're going up for full professor and your job duties say, I'm hired to teach 2 classes, 1 undergraduate, 1 graduate, and to conduct research that involves the built environment, period, and that's all that's in that section, that's a missed opportunity to describe yourself and what you do, and the impact and the relevance of what you do to the university's mission, to the department's mission, the college's mission, the state's mission. If you are a world-renowned architect, I would say, as a world-renowned architect, my job is to blah, blah, blah. All of these other headings here are different parts of the packet where you have the opportunity to insert information. It's important as you insert information into these sections to document impact. So when I talk about my teaching, I want to document the impact of my teaching, right? I want to show evidence and provide evidence that I've met the bar for distinction in that. I want to document in my creative works or my research narrative how my work is impacting the field, how it's published in the best journals, how it's presented at the most prestigious museums, how it's used by the world's top corporations. I want to effectively document not just what I do, but how it's received and how it's changing the world. As we'll talk about later, there's lots of different eyes on your packet, and not all of them are going to know your field. So if I just say that I published in the Journal of Biomechanics, nobody knows outside of my field whether that's the leading journal in my field or not, what the rejection rate of that journal is, how many articles they publish on an annual basis, how many readers they are. And so again, anything that you put in the packet, think through what is the take-home message that I want the reader to get from this, and make sure that they get it. And the easiest way to do that is to say it. So in the research narrative, if 80% of your publications are in the top 5% of journals in your field, say that. If 6 of your portfolios have been reviewed in the New York Times, say that, right? All of these are ways to document the impact and that your field recognizes you as the expert that you are. I have an asterisk here because again, the collective bargaining agreement we have a tentative agreement to have a service narrative. So for those of you who might be reviewing packets this year, that service narrative is available for faculty to use, but it's not part of the decision process for those in unit. Okay, so if you hear about it, it's there because there's only one system, not in unit and out of unit, but it's not a anything that can be held against the faculty member at this stage. As I said before, the analogy I want you to have is that the candidate should be grabbing the reader's hand at section 2 and letting them go at the end of section 33, 34. And your job duties set the stage that you've met the bar for distinction in research, teaching, and service. And you're going to show in research sections, teaching sections, and service sections, you're going to reinforce that message. This is the most persuasive document that you should ever create, because you can't leave it up to anybody else. This is your fate, right? You can't leave it up to anybody else to come to conclusions. You want to drive them to the conclusions with the data that you put in front of them. So we'll talk a little bit again about demonstrating scholarly impact. And I want to just briefly discuss the slight difference between promotion from associate professor to promotion to professor. So promotion to associate professor with tenure is the development, the presence of a national reputation. It looks at your career to this date, and a judgment is made about have you contributed, have you met the bar for distinction, and then the awarding of promotion and tenure. That is a very important decision the university makes, because it is a lifelong commitment to you. If you think about it from a financial perspective, and I didn't do this at all as a faculty member, but then when I had one of my friends who went up the year before me, and then we were talking about after the fact, after I got promoted, and he was like, like that letter means the university just invested between $2 and $3 million in you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you're 30 now, or whatever I was, 35. He's like, you got 30 years times your salary that the university has been saying that we want you around for the next 30 years. And that's a pretty awesome feeling, as you can imagine, when you think about it from that perspective. Promotion to professor also takes into consideration how has your dossier grown from promotion to associate professor. So the trajectory that landed you as the associate professor is not the same trajectory that will get you promoted to full professor. The university likes to see, and your colleagues will like to see, that you've largely been protected from service to university. You've largely been allowed to focus on developing you. And then now we start to look at what is your impact on the university, what is your impact on your profession, and what's your impact on the world. And so we're looking for that profile to grow into the established national, growing international reputation. And you all have the resources within the college to build your brand into an international brand. And there is some strategy involved, right? There's the strategic thinking, strategic actions that you'll need to do along the way, but there is a definite pathway, and some of it is a low-lying fruit pathway to building that national/international reputation. The evaluations of your packet do kind of look at it from different contexts, right? It's the impacts on your department, university, national, and then across the different parts of your assignment. So you really want to have the most comprehensive and persuasive packet possible. Faculty are very good at sniffing non-truths and half-truths, and faculty are very good at sniffing out areas of weakness, if you will, or areas where there's been lack of attention. And so just like when you read a student's submission to you for a project or an assignment, you can see where they didn't pay attention to something, and that happens obviously in the review of promotion dossiers as well. And so that's why I say have a 3-year plan, have a 5-year plan, and make sure you don't leave any stone uncovered, or provide anybody a reason not to think that you should be promoted or tenured. I've used different examples today, whether it be publications or portfolios or shows. All of it, those examples really you should take into your brains and kind of translate into your discipline. If the book is the monetary value for your discipline, then you would expect to have books. If your journal articles are the monetary value for your discipline, then we expect to see journal articles. If it's buildings, if it's shows, exhibits, that's where that departmental criteria and that college criteria really play a large role. But it's also something you should put up front in job duties and specializations. We won't spend much time on this, but I have used the term OPT in the online promotion and tenure home, or online and promotion and tenure. So I just want to direct you to it. It is available through and accessible through MyUFL. So if you just go to MyUFL, obviously dual factor authentication, that may take you 10 minutes to get through it. But if you go through MyUFL on the main menu, then self-service, and then you have faculty promotion and tenure. If you've done those steps, you'll end up with this page. And then you can go through and play around and look at the different types of materials that are there. And the promotion tenure packets, if you hit that section, I think we moved to that on the next slide, it kind of gives you access to the templates. If you want to designate an editor, some colleges have enough resources to have individuals that are able to help faculty build their packets and do stuff in their packets. Or if you're going to be out of town or on leave at a time that you're working on your packet, that's an opportunity where you can designate somebody else to be able to manipulate your packet. But other than that, that's very rare that somebody actually designates one. And then you can see activities along the way. If you hit the packet one, if you now hit this packet template with activity, if you hit that, you'll actually download the current template that will have some information that's pre-populated by university data. We've tried over the years to make it easier for faculty so that you're not collecting data that we already have. So we try to pre-populate it for you, but always check the accuracy of that data. If there's anything inaccurate within certain sections, then we have to go back to the source on that. So for example, if you download it and your graduate committees are wrong, then we'll need to reach out to the graduate school and get GEMs updated. And we can help you connect with anybody who, the data source if you find any errors. Some of our colleges have taken to utilizing a hybrid of the OPT system to run their annual evaluations. And that's what you see on the bottom here. College of Pharmacy has done that. Now, with that said, there are self-service modules that allow you to kind of do the same thing. And so on the self-service modules, if you hit the track ongoing activity, you can insert stuff on a yearly basis that will then be housed in the data stream, so that way when you actually download the packet at the time you want to go vote for promotion, information's already in there. So instead of waiting to the end to type in your publications, you can put them in on a yearly basis. Here are some of the sections that you can update on annual basis that then get stored within the data stream. Some faculty find this very useful. Some faculty have their own online CV system where they are comfortable using that, and then they just download it and cut it and paste into the packet later. To give you an example of what I did the 2 times I was promoted here, I used EndNote for all my publications and presentations. I just had them all put in the EndNote, and then I did the bibliography to match the university's template, and then I just formatted the paper, and boom, there it was. I cut and pasted it over. So whatever is easiest for you, that's what I would do. But we do have an opportunity for you to build it along the way. So some big picture ideas. The packet, once it's certified by the faculty member, so usually what happens is that in early spring, the faculty member decides they're going to go up. They kind of let their chair know in the spring, because the chair is going to have to start working with the faculty member to build outside reviewers. So we need a minimum of 5 outside reviewers. 3 have to come, more than half or more need to come from the candidates list. And as you can imagine, it's a lot of work being asked by an outside reviewer to review packets, so we want to give them as much time as possible. So usually that happens in the spring. July 1, you get entered into the system as going up. The candidate outside letters start getting written. You work on the packet up until probably August or so, maybe a little bit different depending upon college and departmental agreed upon timelines, but then you certify the packet that it's ready to be reviewed. As the outside letters come in, they get put in there, and then your departmental tenure promotion committee gets to review, or all eligible faculty get to review the dossier. They're going to meet to discuss, and then they're going to vote on whether the dossier provides evidence of distinction to be promoted or tenure, depending upon what type of case it is. That vote and the conversation gets transmitted to the department chair. The department chair makes a formal recommendation in the form of a letter, where they summarize kind of the census of the faculty, and they provide their own individual review of the candidate's dossier, and they make a formal recommendation to the provost and the dean on whether they support the packet for promotion or tenure. The candidate then has 10 days to respond to that letter. There's lots of different strategies that I've seen used on responding to the letter or not. If there's factual inaccuracies, then certainly I would respond to the letter. I haven't seen it necessarily help a candidate to disagree with the academic judgment of their chair, but certainly you have the opportunity, if there was misunderstanding or any issues that were brought up in the chair's letter, you should feel free to address them with the counterpoints and counter data. The vote at the department, the chair's letter, and the candidate's rebuttal letter all get transmitted up to the college level. The college reviews it, the college committee reviews it from the viewpoint of the college. That committee is going to vote. Then the dean is going to write a letter of recommendation. Right? So the dean has access to the department's votes, the chair's letter, the college votes. They're going to summarize what happened at the college committee, and they're going to write their recommendation. Then it leaves the college and goes up to the University Academic Personnel Board. That is a faculty committee that represents the diversity across the campus. And it's a 10-person committee, but we'll talk about how it's split here shortly. And they serve in a fact-finding and consultative role with the provost. They review about 250 packets per year. And then the provost, after consulting with the Academic Personnel Board, will make a decision. If it's a promotion decision, the provost is the decider. He's been designated by President Fox to be the decider. Our regulations say that the president is, or his designee. The provost has been made the designee. If it's a tenure case, then the provost makes his recommendation to the Board of Trustees, and the Board of Trustees in the next meeting, which is usually the June meeting, will vote on the award of tenure. So the APB is advisory to the provost. As I said, they review about 250 cases per year. That's from January through the end of May. They review between 10 and 15 cases per week. It's a 10-member committee, 5 elected by the faculty senate, or 5 appointed by the president or the provost, and also includes the vice president for research and then I serve as a secretary to the board. So the APB is made up of all senior faculty. So it's actually split into an orange and a blue team because we're at UF. The orange team is the tenure accruing committee. So they review tenure cases and all faculty promotion titles and the tenure accruing lines. These are all full professors or distinguished professors. There's a blue team. The blue team represents the highest ranks in the non-tenure accruing line. So it may be the highest accruing rank in the lecturer line, a clinical professor, a research professor, and then IFAS extension agent. The blue team only looks at non-tenure track titles, and the orange team only looks at tenure track titles, packets. We have about a 2-hour meeting per week where the cases for that week are discussed, the strengths and weaknesses are reviewed, and the committee comes to a consensus on whether they have concerns with the packet demonstrating distinction relative to the university, college, and departmental criteria. The average packet is about 60 pages or more. If you only put like 1 or 2 sentences per section that you can do it, it becomes about 28 pages of your dossier, and then several pages for the department and the college criteria, et cetera. So it ends up being I think the record that I've seen so far last year was like 212 pages. If you reviewed grants or proposals or manuscripts or book papers or any type of review that you've done in your life, you would appreciate when faculty are concise and directive and demonstrative in their writing instead of having a page of bullets with activities in it. It's more effective to tell me why those activities are important. And so that I don't have to, and I say I'm inserting myself as the reviewer, not that I don't review them for content in my role, but you can imagine that it's a difficult task, it's a daunting task for these faculty, and the easier that you can help them do their job, obviously the more successful you are. Another important concept to remember is that audience disciplinary expertise decreases the farther it goes away from your department. And depending upon the diversity in your department, maybe once it's out of your concentration, you start to lose disciplinary expertise. And so that's where lots of jargon is not helpful. You want to just cleanly and succinctly describe what's going on to the reader. Assume they don't have any disciplinary expertise. And, as I said before, if you're exhibiting in the most prestigious places, say that. Don't just put the name of the place, because an outside person, a historian, might not have any idea that that's a prestigious place. So be as direct as possible. The number of times where I've had this conversation with faculty during workshops or trying to review packets with them, I look at it and I go, okay, what are you trying to tell me in this paragraph, or what are you trying to tell me in this section? And then I'm like, write that down and then make sure, then say it. Because again, a bulleted list of editorial positions doesn't help me know anything about how valuable those positions are. So for example, there's a journal in my field that has over 1,000 people on the editorial board. So it's not that prestigious to be on the editorial board. So if it is prestigious, then say it. You're one of 10 people in this section of this journal or this volume, and you're on there because of your scholarly expertise. I think a lot of times we think that we do service because we're nice people, which is true, but we're being asked to do that service because of our professional capabilities. We serve on review panels and we serve on committees because in our discipline, because those in our discipline recognize us as experts. And that's the message you want the reviewer of a dossier to understand. So a couple key takeaways, and then we'll have certainly some time for conversation. This is your packet. It's nobody else's packet. You control your packet's destiny. I want you to remember that it's not you, it's the packet. So many of us are very humble and we don't like to brag. That's fine. You're not bragging, the dossier is bragging, right? Internal consistency is important. As I said, grab the reader's hand at the very beginning and reinforce the major themes all the way throughout. If you have a good relationship with your chair and your faculty mentor, then their letters, they understand what's going on. They can read your packet and they can reinforce themes in their own letters. You know, we talked about being humble. There's being braggadocious, and they're just telling of facts. And I'll give you an example for my field, and it may be relevant to some fields within the college. But you know, we start to see a lot of packets now that have the person's Google Scholar H-index or their ResearchGate metrics or these type of things, and it's just a number unless you contextualize it. So if you have a Google Scholar H-index of 20, 20 can be world leading in some fields, and it can be very appropriate as an assistant professor in another. The only way that one of our University of Florida readers will know that is if you tell them. If your Google Scholar H-index as an assistant professor is better than all the associate professors at AA institutions or peer institutions that we compete against, then you can say that in your dossier, right? It's a fact. It's a verifiable fact. It sounds like, as you're processing it, it sounds like you're bragging, but your goal is to demonstrate that you're a national player. And if you're more renowned than peers at our peer institutions, then you want to say that. It's really important to seek feedback. What I recommend doing is having somebody who knows you really well read all the narratives that you create, and have somebody that doesn't know you at all read the narratives that you create. And when you do that experience, what I've found is that those that know you really well will often provide feedback that you weren't braggadocious enough, because they know you're better than what you're saying you are. And then those that don't know your work at all are going to pick out the parts where they don't know what the take-home message was. And so if you get that kind of 360-degree view of your packet, you know, well in advance of it going through, and I'm more than happy to work with you to help review some of these things. Obviously, if we have 300 or 400 cases per year, I can't help everyone who may ask, but you should feel comfortable saying, hey, I'm going up next cycle. I started to work on this. Can you give me any pointers? And I'm happy to try to work it into my schedule. Just to give you kind of, again, another part of that 360 view of what's going on. This university we hired our faculty, so this is with the impression and the assumption and the goal, this is the last place they'll ever work. So we've built resources on campus to help support you throughout the life cycle of your career. Take advantage of those resources to develop you. The way that I've seen the development and the training of future faculty happen across the country is that we've become much more specialized in our graduate and our postgraduate training, and there's missing parts to our academic profile that need development. So many times we have assistant professors or lecturers who have been hired who have never taught their own class before. That used to be the normal part of graduate PhD work or graduate training work, and that's been replaced with more specialized training in terms of scholarship and creativity. We recognize that, and so we've built a tremendous amount of resources in the teaching space to help you be effective at teaching. Teaching is valued here at the university, and it is valued in the reviews of promotion packets. It'll be very rare that somebody's good enough in research and service to overcome dismal teaching. Not everybody has the personality or the inherent skill set to be the sage on the stage, the charming actor, the, you know, Dead Poets Society inspirational leader that makes our students stand on the desk and salute our contributions. We're not asking for that. We're asking for a commitment to your craft. So if you've got some student evaluations that are dodgy, maybe they're dodgy in 2 questions a year or 2 in a row, and you notice it, you reflect on it, you start changing some things, you work with the Center for Teaching Excellence or COIP or Academic Technology, and you do a workshop on it, you get a certificate or a passport to good teaching. If you show you're trying, that's what matters. If your peer evaluations, maybe you had some student evaluations that were mixed, maybe you're the receiver of bias in your student evaluations, then we want to make sure, well, what other story can we tell? So let's look at the peer evaluations. And what do they say? And how can we grow based upon the feedback of our peers in the teaching space? Very few faculty discuss at all student learning. But that's the goal of what we do, right? Student learning. So think about students that take your class, how do they do in the next class in sequence? How critical is what you're doing to their success in their undergraduate or graduate work? So again, they might not like you at the time they write their student evaluation, but I think all of us can think back that we had hard professors that we didn't agree with, but then the semester next, we're like, this is the most brilliant person who's had the most impact on my life ever, right? But we only see that snapshot in time if all that's in your packet is a student evaluation. So really holistically look at developing yourself in the teaching space. Apply for teaching awards. You'd be shocked at the number of applications we have for awards that we give. And it's even in your professional disciplines. I oversaw the awards for my national society, and for one of our awards, we had 1 applicant. And guess who got it? The 1 applicant, right? And that applicant can say that they were the winner of this national award. And all they had to beat out was themselves. So apply for as many awards as you can. Sponsored programs and sponsored research has lots of activities available to help you play in the space of external funding. External funding is very important for some disciplines. It's not very important for others. But if it's not important and you get it, it's just it's an extra feather in your cap. We also have to remember that it's very difficult for people as reviewers to remove what they know about those around you. So for example, if funding is not mentioned in your departmental criteria as a criteria for distinction, or it's really hard to get, but two people going up for promotion at the same time you do have funding, right? It's hard to remove that bias of humanity from their minds. So they can't hold it against you because it's not required. But I can't imagine that it won't be part of the conversation, right? And so don't let them create a narrative that you can't control in that space either. We have lots of leadership development and management development programs on campus. I encourage you to take advantage of all of them. I was involved in some of them in year 6 of my academic career, and what I learned in some of those classes and some of those series of classes would have been hugely helpful in year 2 of my academic career. So take the time to build this into your career. If you don't already, please join the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity. We have an institutional membership. We pay close to $50,000 per year. So all of our faculty have access to their professional development resources. So please just go to their website, log on with your ufl.edu email, and you'll have access to all of it. So I'll stop there so I can leave some time for you all to ask questions or help you with any way I can.
So does anyone have any questions for Dr. Haas? Thank you so much for your presentation.
Sure. And I'll send this over to the college. I also have a Dropbox folder that has examples for you guys to take a look at.
That sounds great, Chris. This is Meg. I'm joining you by telephone line, and you came across loud and clear. Thank you for coming. I wondered if you could say a little bit more on how to cultivate a strong pool of outside reviewers that you'll be submitting to your unit director or department chair. We know letterhead matters, but then there are other considerations. So I wondered if you could speak a minute or two on that process of trying to cultivate and trying to decide who would be strong reviewers for your work. And then if you have any time, you've done a really great job giving us a list of best practices to look at, and had mentioned, probably don't go the 200 plus route in creating the dossier. But I would love it if you could spend a little time just talking about like things that you see in the dossier that make you go like, why did they do that? If there's what not to do, just any of those thoughts that could come to mind. Thanks.
Sure. So we'll talk a little about the outside review process. So let me expand that a little bit in terms of building your brand, and then how outside reviewers could play a role in that. So ultimately, we're going to be asking people outside the university to look at your materials, to see if they believe the work that you've done, primarily in your creative works and scholarship area. It's hard for them to judge teaching with anything type of depth, but essentially, how well are you known in the field, and how much is your work impacting the field? So we think about some strategies. I'm just going to open this up so we can talk through them, because I have my ideas, but I always like to learn from the other faculty to see what they have, what their ideas or what comes to mind. But so what are some ways to build your national brand, or what are some ways to show that people nationwide value your creative work or your scholarship? So what's an example of one? You have to actually unmute first, and then I'm going to wait everybody.
Conference invitations.
Conference invitations, right? So so there's two parts there, right? There's conferences and there are invitations. So conferences, right? What is the normal number of conferences per year in your discipline? I think at a minimum, most faculty are going to one.
Yes.
Majority are probably going to two, right? You have your main conference, and then you have your kind of sub-discipline ancillary conference around that, right? Very few of us are in a discipline that has 50,000 people in it, right? I go to one of the conferences I go to has about 13,000 that go to it. Another one has 18,000. I am not going to build my brand in that 18,000 person conference, right? Like I'm going there to get the most diverse, get really good opinions from people, scholars that are like in my field and out of my field, and to push my boundaries of my field. But that's not the conference where I'm building my brand, right? I have to go to it because if I don't go to it, it looks like I'm not a player. But in my sub-discipline and in my smaller cohort groups, I can make a name for myself, right? So I always go to the same conferences every year because I want the facial recognition and I want the work recognition at those conferences. I volunteer to be on abstract review committees within those conferences, right? I volunteer to be session heads. I volunteer to be a moderator. Somebody that reads your packet 6 years later does not know you volunteered to be the moderator. They just know you were the moderator, right? Speaking at other universities is another way that somebody can look at your packet and say that you're impacting your field. Other universities are letting you speak to their scholars and their students. That means they value what you bring to the table, right? They're looking for learning from what you present, and they're looking at their students learning from what you can bring, and they want your opinion of their work, right? That shows that they value your input on the 2 days you're there. Oftentimes those come as invitations, right? And that feels really good. But you can also be strategic. If you're going to be in Colorado to go snow skiing during spring break, and there's 10 universities between Denver and the mountains, and you have a colleague in the field at one of those universities, hey, Bob, I'm going to be in your area on Friday, March 11th. I would love to show you the work that I'm currently doing, maybe get your insights, meet some of your students, kind of see how you're doing things there. What do you think? And again, you're building your brand. If they say yes, then they value what you're bringing to the table. They're not paying for you to come there. So this is like the level of strategy that I think faculty oftentimes don't think through. Invite people who you might want to be your outside reviewers to your departmental seminar series. Invite them to guest lecture in your class, or invite them to guest lecture in your departments, one of your department's classes, if it's not in your class because you're worried about a conflict of interest. My department has a seminar series, and the only people we invite to speak in our seminar series are people who will review our grants and people who will write outside letters for our faculty. And we invite them, we bring them in, we show them a good time, we impress them with the quality of the work that's doing. And then 2 years later, they're asked to be an outside reviewer for one of our faculty. There's no conflict of interest because they don't know them. They've never collaborated with them. They never published with them. they've never written a grant with them. They've never done any of the things that would lead to them having a conflict. Right? A conflict occurs when somebody else benefits from your success. They're not going to benefit from you being promoted. But if you can put a positive bias in as many heads as possible, that's smart. As I said before, half of the reviewers have to be from the candidates list. So as a candidate, you have to be very strategic on who you put on your list. And you should call around and ask your colleagues at other universities about who you might put on your list. When I went up for full professor, I had a person on my list. I was the incoming president of my national society, which meant that I had spent the previous year working with the executive board and past presidents. And one of the people that I put on my list was a former past president of my association. And I had worked with him in this process, and I had worked with him in the past when I was a meeting chair. So I'm in my head thinking, former president of my society, he knows me, we've worked together quite well, so I'm going to put him on my list. And then I called my friends at his institution, and they said that he's never voted yes on a promotion packet, and he's never written a positive letter. So I would have sunk my own case without doing my due diligence. So you were in graduate school, you were in professional trainings, like you have colleagues throughout the country, and we all go through this process, right? So who are names who they have seen not effective letters from? So again, there's a lot of strategy. So for us, we look at the most effective ones are ones with no conflict of interest, no perceived conflict of interest, fully above board. They have nothing to gain. They're at a peer or aspirational peer institution that's usually defined as AAU institution or some ranking that of institutions within your discipline, right? So, and somebody of a higher rank than you. Now, let's say the best person in the world at what you do is at North Florida. That's more important than them not being at an AAU institution, right? So don't say, well, gosh, the person's, if the leading authority in your area just happens to be at a school that's not as on paper looks like us, then I would still use that individual. But I wouldn't get a letter from a non-peer or non-aspirational peer unless they are well-known in the field. So again, be strategic, have your list. For example, when I went out for full, I knew, or I had a pretty good idea that Professor Y would write me a positive letter. And I had a pretty good feel that Professor Y was going to be on my chair's list. So I didn't put him on mine. So that way the chair could choose them from his list, and then I can have the ones that I felt were good on mine. I do not recommend you reaching out to potential writers and say, hey, would you write me a positive letter? Can I put you on my list? I don't think that's a very good strategy. I've seen it happen. I've gotten those letters. It puts a bad taste in my mouth, in my opinion, but you generally know, you get a sense of like, people have seen your work, they've reviewed your work, they've interacted favorably with you or your students at conferences. Your dossier is better than theirs. Like one of the things I did is I went to the list of the AAU institutions that had my department, and I found a few individuals who were at a rank higher than me whose CV was not as good as mine. And I rolled the dice on that they would look at my CV and think that I was doing good work. And that worked for me. So I think the outside letters are not something to take lightly. It's a lot of work for them. it's a lot of work for the chair to try to go find them. So really partner with your chair, start thinking, you know, as far in advance as you can, or your director, as far as you can, advance as you can. Any letter that comes in has to go in the packet. So that's you know, kind of another important consideration. Meg, is there anything else in that outside letter part that you want me to address, or you want me to?
No, I think that's good. And I feel like that cultivation process starts early. And while we're in this virtual world, for example, we have faculty presenting on our first virtual research symposium. You know, go ahead and reach out and say, oh, you know, I've, you know, your theoretical framework has really influenced some of my research I'm starting. I'd love to have you or your students join us at the session. I mean, there's no cost to doing that. I think it's that networking piece is really important. I know as an external reviewer, I get asked a lot more than I'm able to say yes. It really does exact a pound of flesh every time you do one of those reviews. You know, it's stakes are high and you really put a lot of time into it. So I think, you know, your points are, you know, really right on.
Yeah, and take advantage of the virtual world. I mean, I got an email today from one of my colleagues to attend his PhD student's dissertation defense. And there's no way that would happen in the lot, right? There's no way in the normal environment that I could do that. But now I can, right? So now I'm going to interact with his PhD student much earlier in their career than ever possible otherwise. And then with respect to kind of don'ts, I think the biggest don'ts are, again, I would say it's no lack of context. Bullets with lack of context. Bullets are great when you say the criteria for distinction in URP are 1, 2, and 3, and here is the evidence in my dossier, right? So above average teaching is a criteria for distinction in my department. In section 17, you'll see evidence of X. In section 18, you'll see my passport to great teaching. In section 19, you'll see that I've won 3 teaching awards, versus just having those things laying out there by themselves. I mean, our reviewers take their jobs very seriously, but help them help you, right? Like, lead the horse to water and push his face in it, not just hope that he drinks. I think a lot of, and this is not something that the faculty can always control, but you get information from people maybe who went to the process a few years ago, and they're not as in tune, they haven't been to one of our workshops in 3 years. And so I think sometimes people get bad advice. I think people, you know, it's tenure when ready and promotion when ready here. And I think sometimes people don't go up because they're afraid that there's this higher bar. So they don't go up. And then I think sometimes people go up way too early. And so I think having real conversations and honest conversations with a lot of different people about those ideals can play a role. I mean, I've definitely seen packets where I'm like, why is this packet here? And I think the only, I guess the way that I would say it is that, you know, if you're going up early and there's questions about whether you meet the bar for distinction, there's no risk to university to saying no. there is a risk for them saying yes if, you know, it's a 60-year commitment and they're not quite sure. Or so I think that I mean, I went up early twice in my career, so I don't not recommend it. I think if you're ready, you're ready. But I think there is some times where the benefit of the doubt is not there if you have extra time on the clock. I think there's a lot of mistruths and misgivings for our non-tenure track faculty about success rates and who's reviewing them and do they get a fair shake. And our non-tenure accruing faculty at every rank are more successful percent-wise. Traditionally, our overall university is between 89 and like 96% yes at the provost level. So in the worst years, it's 89%, and then the best years, it's in the high 90s, and it's usually in about the 93, 94% success rate. So this is something that should definitely happen. We expect when we hired you that we'll have a 100% success rate. So I don't think anybody's concerned by those numbers. But at the different ranks, obviously they're a little bit different. It's a little bit, promotion to full professor is a, you know, national, international kind of level thing. Your total package player contributing to the university, to the state, to the world, if you will. And so I think sometimes people go up with just, I've been here X amount of years, so therefore I think that leads to maybe some slightly lower success rates there. But our clinical lines, our research lines, and our teaching lines have a higher success rate. Have the higher success rate. And so again, it's reviewed by the APB by colleagues that look like them, right? They're colleagues who are experts in teaching or experts in service or experts in professional contributions. And so I think those missed truths are out there that drives anxiety. We'll all know a story of somebody who didn't get promoted that should have, or we felt like they should have. Humans are involved, so I think there's always going to be that kind of horror story that we hear about, but I think we should remind ourselves that those are very rare and few and far between, and that shouldn't guide our anxiety. The same thing is true, but we never really think about it that way. There's people who are promoted that ultimately maybe don't have the career that, or tenured who ultimately don't have the career that their colleagues were expecting to. So, but that doesn't make us anxious. So just keeping that balance. The other thing again is, you know, I've literally, your packet goes in August and you can add stuff to it until the final decision is made. And we had a candidate 2 years ago who was denied promotion, who received 3 grants from August to May and didn't put them in their packet. And they got denied promotion because there wasn't enough evidence of distinction in research and scholarship. And so if they would have just taken the time to put those in front of the reviewers, you know, they would have likely had a successful review. So being like, when there's stuff in your control, not taking advantage of it, I think that's a definite bad practice. I'm trying to think if there's, you know, there's the misformatting, using the wrong template, lots of spelling errors, you know, lack of attention to detail. While certainly it's not a criteria, it just sets the mood of the review in a direction. I think that's humans and human biases can come into play. And that's never something you want to do. In terms of promotion, I think there's also like strategies involved. Like, don't wait until you've had a down year to go up. Or, you know, when you win the national award, go up, right? Or if you're out of grant funding and grant funding is important, that's probably not the time to be reviewed. And then again, I guess the last thing is just the impact. I mean, I've read some really well-written and cool narratives that make me think the work the person's doing is really neat, but have no idea if they're good at it or if it's making any difference. And so using the whole narrative to kind of walk somebody through an enzymatic pathway where it's like, I studied this reaction and then I found Y, and then I did this reaction and I found this and I found this, like that's good like in parts of a grant, but it's not good to help the history professor understand why your work is impactful and how you're demonstrating distinction. Nowhere in anybody's department's criteria does it list the specific reaction or the specific building or the specific plan or policy statement. So balancing that kind of writing to your discipline expertise versus writing to the whole university is where people can go wrong.
Thanks, Chris. That's really helpful to think about.
I have a question.
Sure.
Thank you for the presentation. It's very helpful. So my question is, COVID-19 has, of course, changed many things. Do you expect to see more packets next year, this coming cycle? And see, there are many research areas, they are not going to receive grants because of lack of funding, lack of money on those particular fields. On the other hand, people who are working in infectious diseases or AI, they are going to get a lot more grants. So, how we should put this in the packet or how to set the narrative for that?
Yeah, absolutely. And those are great points. And that's where it's very typical kind of at the university level to have a blanket statement because as you said, there's a tremendous number of our faculty who have been completely paralyzed at this time academically. And there's a subset of our faculty who have never been more productive in their careers. And so we can't say, well, don't expect anything from anybody, because then suddenly we're only giving merit and rewarding the people who by fate happen to be in an area that hasn't been affected, right? So that's where I really feel that the community of scholars that we live in, it is our job to contextualize the world that we live in. And so with that said, we are pushing for, and we have to bargain this, and I don't think we'll have any problems, getting this agreed upon. But we do believe that an impact statement is important in the dossier, and whether it's an official section or if it's just added as a section within the further information, I think it would be a complete missed opportunity to not have something in there. The second thing is that you cannot assume that anybody else is going to say it. So for example, if you know that your agency or your foundation or your whatever has decided not to give grants out this year, I would say that in my packet. Because that's the only way that a reviewer is guaranteed to know it. I fully expect our chairs will help contextualize, and I fully expect that outside reviewers who are disciplinary expertise will also contextualize. And if they don't, then they're not part of the community of scholars that we want them to be a part of. And so while I understand there's a lot of fear, I've written several outside letters for this cycle for other universities, and I have a full section on that in the letters that I write, where I say that as a senior-ish faculty member in my field, The impact of COVID has been that our 3 national meetings that I normally go to have been canceled. The review times now are taking 20% longer than they were before. And I review their packets in the context of that environment. And I would encourage our chairs and directors, when they send out external letters, to ask reviewers to kind of comment on that. It's a double-edged sword too, right? Because you could have a jerk that says, I don't think it's impacted us at all, they should be fine. And they're doing the one subset of landscape architecture that wasn't affected, or they've done, or one subset of urban planning that hasn't been affected, and that is bad. But I do think we have to be forthright and upfront. And I don't want to put the burden on the faculty member, but if you don't say it, the only thing you can control is what's in your packet. And so if you don't put it in there, there's no way to know for sure that somebody else is going to put it in there. So I would definitely build in, a sentence here or there in different parts of the section, I think is, useful. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. It was really good. And the last part of the question was, do you expect to see more?
Oh, sorry. There are maybe about 20 more cases this year than last year. Okay. Where I really expect to be slammed is when the effects of the faculty 500 hiring happens. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're about 2 years away from what I think will be a oh my goodness moment, where we need to think through to make sure we have the resources to effectively review these packets. And I think sometimes as even at the departmental level, you're like, well, I gosh, I have a week to read these. And when it's only one, that's fine if you forget, and then you're like, okay, last minute, and then you dedicate 2 hours to read it. But if suddenly you have 11, then we're gonna have a problem. And so I have asked the colleges, or some of the colleges, the bigger colleges in particular, to kind of map out, because based upon hire date, it's all guessing, right? Because people can go up early, but based upon hire date, trying to give an estimate of what the next few years look like. And from the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences, I think in about 3 years from now, the number of cases will have doubled. Wow. And for that means the dean, instead of writing 30 letters, have to write 60 letters. So again, we have to make sure that we have time and infrastructure to make sure that candidates aren't, there's not unintended consequences to our candidates for that. And so we've had some initial conversations about trying to make, would we need to add people to the APB or start earlier? So those are happening, but it's, yeah, I don't envy the bigger colleges deans. The one dean said, well, she was like, I know when I'm going to retire now. And I don't know, like, for your chairs, if you if chairs are on the line, or if they have access to this, I'm happy to work with them on some chair examples or some best practices or things to make sure that they put in there, some strategies. Happy to do that. I know that if there's not chairs, then the faculty candidates are more than welcome to kind of put a bug in their chair's ear or director's ear if they. I think the hard part is when we have, we have institutional knowledge, but then it goes away the further you're away from it. And so it's always a good reminder for the chairs and senior faculty to make sure they pay attention to these presentations every now and then, just as a reminder of kind of what candidates are being told versus what they remember.
Well, this was a really wonderful session, and we thank you so much for meeting with our community over in DCP. I know we have you coming back a couple more times to talk, to focus in on some different audiences related to the promotion process. We're going to be looking at mid-career promotions, and I would welcome this group of mostly untenured faculty to join us at that session to sort of really dive into what that next milestone of promotion from associate to full looks like. We're also going to have a session that is tailored for lecturers, scholars, others that are in the non-tenure track lines that are so important to our departments and schools and the life of our community. So we have a special session. So Chris, thank you so much for giving so generously of your time and agreeing to be taped. I know I had a whole slew of faculty who were teaching at this time. So thanks for coming, and we'll see you back here in probably a few months.
Yeah, perfect. And I'll send you, Meg, Dropbox links that will have the PowerPoint, and then some example research statements, example teaching statements, some PowerPoints, et cetera, just for the college can use as a reference to help support their faculty.
Oh, that's great. That's always helpful to have those models.
Yep.
Well, thanks to everybody for coming to this Let's Talk Roundtable with Dr. Chris Haas. So I think we're ready to wrap up, and thank you so much. This was fantastic.